In this episode, I want to go with you from Adobe Bridge with raw images directly into Photoshop, into Photomerge, and create in one row 360-degree panorama. And as I get not tired to say, there is a big difference between when you shoot for art as a photographer or if you shoot for 3D. For 3D, you want to have information. And one exposure is, of course, pretty limited. When you talk about HDRI, LDRI looks really, really limited. But sometimes it's sufficient, and that's the beauty. Not for this shot here. I can certainly say this because I shoot deliberately into dark areas and into bright areas. And the problem that we have normally when we shoot in panorama, we move the camera one time around 360 degrees. That is of course clear and logical, but we look into exactly the opposite direction, and that means the light situation changes dramatically within 360. There's the problem, and there's why I do not normally suggest 360 with one exposures. Anyway, the workflow here is important, how it works, and to show where we have maybe limitations, and to really point out what we don't want to do for 3D and what we can do for art. And I say here art to make that more clear. 3D is art, but the stuff that you want to put inside of it is pure information to create finally art. So, having said that, I create here now my panel with images, and I take here the middle exposure from these three, and I have done this with a stop of 11 because that lens with 25 millimeters has the sharpest resolving with f-stop 11. Yeah, that's pretty high, and I was surprised as well. I normally thought it's 8, but I checked it again, and everything else is a little bit blurrier. And it depends, of course. When you go down, and this is a zoom lens, to 16, it's maybe different than with 35 millimeter. Whatever. I have here f11, a 60th of a second, and ISO 160. And again, this is just because I had 160 in it. It's not the native, and I know there's a lot of talk on the internet that 160, 320, 640 for this camera is the native. There is not a cascading native ISO available. The truth, what I think is the most truth, is that 100, 200 and so on was already very nicely integrated, and then 160, 320, 640 was just interpolated. And so the image is captured a little bit brighter and then moved down, which puts the noise level down. And so there's that myth of 160, 320, whatever. So I do not indicate here that I prefer this. On the end, when you expose in the right way and you move things up and down, perhaps you have exactly the same. Anyway, I have to select now here 12 images because I have shot with 30 degree each image apart from each other, and so I need 12 images here one time around. And the beauty of Bridge is it will tell me how many images I have here, and now I'm done. So the next one should be already the one that looks upwards. Perfect, it does. With the control click, I go here and say open in camera raw. And now you might be surprised how little I will do. I could go here maybe and say please go for fringing and go for enable lens profile, and this lens is already here inside, and I hope it's okay to have that. What I would do when I go this route here, and this is only when I go directly then to Photoshop, I wouldn't do all of that when I save these images out to use them in another application which can't read the metadata and where I have baked in already the lens distortion correction, because then I move pixels twice around. So there's the big difference, number one. What I would do, and we have for noise always to go to 100%, when we have some noise here in it, I can't see here anything. The blue stuff is dark. You see here the crop data. Normally we can fix a lot of noise with exactly this slider here. I wouldn't go with the sharpening too high, if at all. For a one exposure, perhaps maybe a little bit, but I'm not really happy with this option here. I would sharpen it later with a deconvolution process, not with sharpening where I get perhaps edges in it. Of course, this sharpening here is a mixture out of different ways, and wherever you have the slider, you will get a different mix out of different versions. I don't know what it is. Finally, no one tells me really in a white paper, so careful with that stuff. So I can't see noise here, but the most important part is that when you put it in, you see the dark areas go away, because noise goes equally, roughly, from the tone values that this area had up and down. So when you kill a little bit noise, you kill also the superplex here. I hear some people screaming, there are no superplex. Okay, go with that. Whatever. What I measured was that we had here 6500 degree Kelvin, and that's right. It's a little bit warmer. It's 6300, 6250 normally, but I like it a bit warmer, to be honest, because all of that green here, I had the impression there's too much yellow in the air. So my measurement was maybe a little bit in the other direction, which normally would tend to this direction, but I think it's a little bit too bluish. So with a gray card you could measure that, but keep an eye which light finally hits the gray card to get really the right measurement. Here we have a little bit red, that is this guy here, it's over the top, and the blue one again is the black one. What we can do here is of course move the exposure a little bit up, and this would be all I do here, because anything else will go like this curve here. And at the moment it's straight, but when we check here the highlights a little bit, when we use lights a little bit and so on, it will not really work in the best way. And the highlights here are different than the highlights here. Here the highlights take information from other channels if you have clipped values, and that results in loss of saturation and so on. Not very fun. So if you use the curve here, then you have to illuminate the scene inside of cinema exactly in the same way, and that might be a little bit difficult. So I like to have it straight as raw is. That would be the first step. So contrast, highlight, shadows, whites and blacks, I leave them in the way they are, because in the moment I just pull here the blacks a little bit up to get rid of these dark areas, I create a toe in the curve. It's not straight anymore. You might discuss this in a different way, or you have the background image in a separate plate so you can finally pull all of these values for the 3D stuff independently. I get lost here always in discussions like that. So let's say I have put my light temperature here right, and then I select all, synchronize them, and I have all in the same way. So for anything else than Photoshop, I would save this now here as a 16-bit image in ProPhoto to have the largest gamut. And of course 16-bit more is not possible from RAW here. When I have done this, I can say done. And then I get here my little icon that I have made adjustments, and these images look already different. This looks colder here. This looks more like I have seen it and measured it with the gray card. But of course, gray cards are not absolute. It depends in which direction you hold them and from which direction light comes, where you have maybe some reflections. Long story. Not an absolute at all. With this information in it, I can go now here to Tools and then go to Photoshop. And then I say Photomerge. And sometimes it doesn't even start. Then please check the memory. It needs memory, otherwise it just stops. So now we have here different versions, and I avoid, as you might know, auto to all cost, if possible. Perspective, and we have discussed this, is just plain and projected. Lots of distortion, not usable for 360 at all. Cylindrical is here my prime idea, because we have one row and it goes exactly that, and we have shot horizontally. Otherwise I would go maybe to spherical when I have shot up or down one row. Collage and reposition is normally a good idea when you have only 1 or 2 shots and you have a long lens, for example, where you have not a lot of parallax in it. Then this might be the highest quality possible. Maybe not the right distortion, direction, correction, whatever. So cylindrical it is. And what I try sometimes when I have really problems with Photoshop's blend image together, I uncheck this. Then you get each image without any adjustments, because Photomerge is not only creating a theme, it color corrects these themes also to the neighbor, but only locally. It's not a global color correction to make everything equal. It just takes a little area from the side and then punches it in. So blending images together, sometimes manual work is very, very much work, but it's the more comfortable when you want to have quality. But most of the time we get nice results. So first try blend, second try if that fails. Vignetting removal. I would do this, especially when you have areas with a lot of fog, haze and stuff like that. Because in these areas then it is more or less really visible. With a lot of high frequency details it might not so need it. Geometric distortion correction, that is why I have set the lens in camera raw. That's all we have to do. And then we click OK, and that's pretty much all. And then we get something or we don't. See you when it's done. And here we see how it works, reading camera raw format, and then the next one, and we wait. And now it starts to work on each image, aligning and all the other little steps. And here we are already generating the output panorama. So, and it's done, and you can see here where the seams are. That's not really something dangerous, that's typical, and when you merge it, it's gone. What we have here to do is, of course, first of all, check all the layers are there, nice, and then we have this pot here twice in the picture. That's not really nice, that was not as expected, and a 360 should be exactly here on the end and exactly there on the end. So we have to fix this. But before I do this, I go back here with the tab and I want to see it bigger so I can see if there are some mistakes in it. So I go now here just one time along, check everything. If I can see a seam, something double, something that doesn't work very well. And I think so far it's perfect, and that's very nice. So when I'm a little bit slow here, but I want to give you, of course, a chance to see that as well. And now we have to fix this here to make it seamless. And I like to do this not with all these things here in one. What I like to do is to go here, press the Alt or the Option key, and then go here to Merge Visible. And I press the Alt or the Option key to get a new layer with all the information that we have here. Then I click here on one, go down, Shift, click to get all, and Command G to make a group. So I have all here in one folder, and I can switch them on or off at once. That's the easiest way. So then I can go here now and with Command R to get here my rulers, and then I drag here just 2 rulers out, one in the vertical way and one here horizontally, and I try to find a point that I can memorize easily. And so I go here to 100% to really see that I'm there. Okay, that's 200, that's even better. And with the weak here, I get here my little tool, if not already active, and move this here exactly to this corner. That's the point that I want to have. And that's just randomly a point that I have to have on the left side in the same way. So then I go here with the hand tool over to the other place, and I take a look here where the pot is, there, go down a little bit, and that looks pretty similar here. So I take another line here the tube exactly in the way I want to have it, and this time I take here my slide one and go back, check it again, and I think it looks pretty much okay. Yeah, it could be a little bit higher here, but I don't want to be too frugal because I'm already here on 200% and I have to check out if it works or not. So what we can do here, of course, is not to use an object that is exactly here very detailed or so. Something with high frequency would be nicer, but we have only flash, so to say, from here to here. What I do now to make that visible, what we do now here is of course just to take here my tool, my crop tool, and I check if I have everything here to snap. Yes, it makes it easy, and that is why I use here these lines, just like that. And I click here return. It might take a while because I have all these layers here inside. So this is done, and let's go here back to normal. And I use to keep these groups here a little bit because if I need something I have it, and so I waste maybe a little bit time on the cropping. Anyway, the next step here is then to check how the seam works here. And the simplest way is of course now to go here to filter, to offset, and then take here maybe a nice number in it, maybe 1024, something that we use all the time. So, and then I can go here to this area and check if I can see any seams. And if I see it, then I have to use another method, of course. This is here the quick and easy way, and I think I can get away with it. It was here and I see a tiny little bit, but I have to go here already to 100% to really see something. And it's not really there. So this works. And the other way would be, of course, to make a copy of that layer, move it exactly so they overlap, but move it only horizontally, not vertically. And when they fit exactly on top of each other, you only have to cut, and then it works maybe nicer. So here we have now some tiny little cosmetic stuff to do if you want to go really into a pixel counting area. And normally I go, this goes here down a little bit, this goes more down, so I take it from here, and then it could go here just over that, and that's all. Here the same, a little bit steeper to get down to that, and so on. Okay, I don't want to waste too much time here, I think it's fine. So everything looks fine, I have checked it again, and that means I can now delete this group. And normally the best idea is always to go then to flatten the image when you have only one layer in it, so other applications who are not really compatible with Photoshop can read it. And I have disabled, of course, the option that any application can read Photoshop files, which normally creates another layer inside the file and doubles the information. Not very funny. So background here is my first choice, of course, and then I go here a little bit smaller, or Command O, and Command 0, sorry, not O. And then I go here again to my crop tool, and I have to cut here a little bit away. This is not very nice, and that would distract, of course. Go as close as possible to it and click return. This time it might be faster, and it is. So this sums it up already, and of course we go shortly to Cinema 4D. Yeah, and here in Cinema 4D we need, of course, first of all a material, and inside of this material we want to use the luminance channel and nothing else, and then we take here and material into it, and we take a look here in scene files and text, and this panorama is the one that we want to have. You see, it's not quite small, even with 16-bit. So the same one with 180 degree view and 32-bit float was 1.1. There's quite the difference. So we need some time until it's loaded. So it's loaded, and of course we have here already a size 24,228 by 5,306. We have the perfect profile here. That works as well, so we can close this here for a moment. So we take a cylinder here, and the cylinder itself needs no caps because we want to have everything in terms of image on the cylinder wall or code, but we don't want to have anything on top or on the floor because we have maybe something else for that. So what we can do here is, of course, to check out the ratio of the panorama, which should fit exactly to this cylinder. And we can scale this later up or down because inside of the cylinder should fit our scene in a way that it makes sense to the context that we have photographed. So let's have a look. We go to the cylinder, to object, and we have here a radius. And so we can type in here 24,228, and that would be now exactly one time around. Now we want to have this short little one here, and that would be exactly divided by pi. We can type in p and I, and then we need that twice, of course. We need exactly the radius, that means divided by 2, and this gives 856. So, and then we go now here in height with this number here, which means we go 5,306. That gives roughly a size like this one here. And when I drag now here my panel on it, that should work. So normally this one time around divided by pi is the diameter, and then we have to divide it again because we have the radius here in the cylinder. And so we have our ratio now here inside, and to scale it nicely up and down, we could use, of course, always the model tool here, the object tool, sorry, but because it's a primitive, but when we place this here underneath of a null, and the null is exactly in the middle of it, we can use here exactly this, and we can scale it up or down in one step. Works nicely here. And so let's do this and have an eye that you get always all axes here. So, and then we can put maybe a camera here inside. Put it to 0, 0. And then we can take a look here around, and we get exactly what we had. So a chair would be here exactly the right thing. And what I know, of course, what you might not notice directly, it's mirror-sided. So the easiest way is, of course, to check the texture tag here, go to tiles U and put here a dash into it, -1, and now everything here is in the right way. So one time around here again, looking into the garden, and we could go also up and down to a certain degree, and we need a floor, we need a sky object, and sometimes with these panoramas, when we don't have trees here in it, then we can maybe take a mask and use the physical sky here in Cinema 4D. And that's normally the best replacement because we have HDR in an instant, and then everything else in the panel can stay with 16-bit, for example. Just a little hint, I think I said that before. So thanks for listening, have fun with it, bye bye.